Warning! Turns out there are a lot of different classifications for video games. This is just my take on it. If anything's inaccurate, which it will be, I won't fix it. In today's world, the masses' taste in a good game has been refined to the point that anything lacking quality will be panned and likely fail. Why do you think my channel's not successful? Despite this fact, for some reason you can still find people playing dating games. There are a lot of games out there. If Activision's going to make a new Call of Duty each year, we're going to have to classify said games somehow. So we made game genres. If you play Mario and immediately say, you don't like video games, screw you. There are many different genres that play totally different. You can't even jump in Pokemon, let alone have a good time. Want to know just a few genres that are entirely different? No? Platformer, adventure, RPG, sports, survival, sandbox, shooter, dating, strategy, puzzle, fighting, party, and that's just the tip of the iceberg I'll be chipping away at to create enough content to entertain the 135 people who actually like my content. I haven't even mentioned subgenres or what any of these genres even mean, so why sit on the surface when we can start digging? Let's go. Let's start with the main genres. These mainly consist of platformer, adventure, RPGs, fighting, or shooters, but can also consist of survival, dating, puzzle, sandbox, and sport. These can be noticed almost immediately opening up the game. Platformer, adventure, not worth my time. You see, it's easy. Sometimes they'll be a bit different. Say with Minecraft, they could be considered either survival or sandbox. I personally believe it's sandbox, though, because the survival aspect is really easy to overcome, and more people remember how cool their bunker is instead of how it will fortify them from the oncoming waves of zombies and such. But if it's a sandbox game with survival elements, where does the survival go? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it goes into the subgenre. Subgenres can be less impactful main genres if the main genre has already been filled with something else, but can also be entirely their own thing. Some subgenres are survival horror, battle royale, Metroidvania, roguelikes, etc. Those are only a few of the many subgenres that I'm not willing to name all of. Subgenres are very important to games as well, because a subgenre defines the gaming experience, and say a turn-based RPG can be way different from a roguelike. While the main genre gives you a general idea, the subgenre actually tells you what you'll likely play. So now that we know the basics, it's time for me to go over most of the genres. This won't be a professional review of everything, just a cover of practically every game genre and subgenre with a bit of my opinion sprinkled in. So let's get into it. To start off, we have adventure-style games. The subgenres include open-world, text-based adventures, visual novels, RPG, action-adventure, survival horror, Metroidvanias, etc. A lot of adventure-style games rarely have you go from point A to B. They will be very narrative-driven usually, and are usually a good time. A lot of games fall under adventure, so I just went with what you'd usually see with them and few outliers. Next we have platformers, which consist of 3D platformers, 2D platformers, Metroidvanias, action platformers, etc. Platformers can either be casual calm experiences, or the hardest thing you've ever played. They're classified as games where you have to jump from place to place as a way to get around, but some do more than others. Personally, my favorite platform genre is 3D platformers because they usually support exploration and you can just do whatever you want in them. Metroidvanias are just that, but 2D, and they're more difficult. I'd recommend platformers because they're really fun, even in their most simplistic forms. Well, you can't talk game genres without mentioning RPGs because those things are everywhere. The types of RPGs are turn-based, tactics, strategy, MMO, adventure, roguelikes, JRPGs, etc. RPGs are a very popular game genre, and I can see why. There's a lot of RPG subgenres, so it's hard to say I don't like RPGs. Personally, they aren't my favorite, but I just never played them very long. What I have played has been fun, and I can see what people like about them, but personally I'd only sink around 10 to 20 hours into them, which is short for an RPG. The only RPG I've ever beaten was Mario & Luigi Nintendo's Search History, but their stories are usually enthralling and the best in the market. Persona 5, for example, I've heard is really fun and could practically replace your life if you wanted to due to the amount of content. They're fun, just something I never sink too much time into. But those genres are too friendly. I want to be scared. I want to go, oh wait, the majority of these games aren't actually scary. Whoops. The horror genre consists of survival horror, visual novels, multiplayer horror, cheap, etc. The horror genre can be great, but the majority of it goes to the cheap category. I would like to remind you, though, that despite the name cheap, the cheap genre of horror is its own art, intentional or not. Horror usually gets a bad rep because of the games that become popular because of becoming a trend instead of doing something groundbreaking. I still think horror is generally a good genre, though. A good horror game can leave an imprint both in your mind and in your pants, especially with survival horror. Multiplayer horror can be a blast too, just not really scary. But you know what is equally as scary but dramatically downplayed? Guns! Let's get into shooters, or Doom clones if you're old. The subgenres for shooters are linear, first-person, third-person, open-world, battle royale, 3v3, team-based, casual, etc. There are a lot of subgenres for shooters. Now granted, any game with a gun could technically be considered a shooter, but we're talking about games that revolve around the gun. They're fun. The majority of the most successful games are shooters, so I can't blast them. I usually just sink around 1 to 5 hours in them and stop playing for a long period of time to come back later when everyone else is better than me. Back when my voice was comparable to old playground equipment, I voiced my anger for Fortnite and the Battle Royale genre as a whole. But now that I've matured, I can say that they're quality games, just not for me. Except for PUBG, that game's, actually broken. But sometimes, murder isn't fun, and you just want to sit back and relax. Not in real life, though. Real life sucks. The subgenres for Sandbox are farming, life sim, art, etc. I rarely play these, but when I do, I usually sink around 40 hours into them before turning them off and never touching them again for several years. Your goal in these games is usually whatever you want. Somnic walks up to you and says, "Here, I gave you an island. Feel free to blow up the whole thing if you want." They're usually games that you can sit back and relax to. They're great times, and I have nothing bad to say about them. Unlike fighting games. The fighting subgenres are 2D, 3D, beat 'em up, party, etc. These games are rarely fun for me. I would argue they're the most repetitive game genre where all you do is fight, finish, repeat. Now granted, I can see what people enjoy about the genre. You can feel the progression as you get better at the game. But other games do that too. And better. I guess games like Smash get a pass even though all the good parts of the game are turned off by superior gamers. They're just not fun, and why do you have 145 hours in the game? Ah! So now that I've had a passive-aggressive conversation with that person, I'll proceed to talk about puzzle games. I think they're okay. The subgenres for puzzle are grid-based, card-based, adventure, casual, I guess battle royale now, platformer, etc. Puzzle games are fun to pop in and out of. They're usually casual times, but sometimes they're... Yeah, that. They're an interesting game genre to me because they actually fit most genres, but are still a genre of their own. They're fun enough, and I can't think of a transition to the next genre, so... whoop. The survival genre is great. The survival subgenres are sandbox, horror, there's a difference between survival horror and survival horror, hardcore, casual, etc. I find survival games to be greatly rewarding. First popularized by Minecraft and first done right by Don't Starve, the survival genre gives you a sense of completion. Usually, they are fairly tough games, so overcoming the challenges that the world gives you makes you feel powerful. What's even better about these games is, as Ark says on the back of the box, survival is just the beginning. After you survive, you thrive, and you show the world that you are the most powerful creature. Or at least that's what I feel. The difficulty and overall unfairness is off-putting to a lot of players, especially when it's hardcore. In games like Raft, you lose all your stuff, which makes you pretty angry. In Don't Starve, you lose the entire world, which pisses me off. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention, the majority of the genre is garbage, so that may also be why some don't like it. I still say give them a try, though. They can be great games once you actually learn what you're doing, and for the last time, Terraria is not a survival game. Just because it looks like Minecraft doesn't mean it is. I don't see a hunger bar, do you? If you want to go outside and kick around the football, you totally can, but you need friends, and stamina, and skill, and... You know what, let's just play video games. The subgenre for sports are field-based, racing, party, exercise, etc. I'm not really a fan of sports games, which I don't believe is an unpopular opinion. Now granted, I will play racing games, and I'll always be down for a game of Wii Sports, but the rest of it never really stuck with me. If I want to play a sport, I'll just not, because I'm not going to play a sport. So that should be all of them. Did I miss any? If I did, please inform me in the comments. I will gladly not update this video to fit your needs. If you can see, you should have noticed my new style. The whole channel has been going through a redesign from me to the editing software. I'm finally not making it all in your old iPad. I don't usually do this, but I'd greatly appreciate it if you subscribed. I'm planning to focus more on the channel and the actually scripted episodes instead of just the Animaniacs. That should be it, and I bid you best on your journey ahead. I'm gonna go not play a fighting game.